and welcome to the big show. My name is Mickey, and this is Mickey in the Middle, the quintessential show for Middle Americans, where all Middle Americans are welcome. It doesn't matter where you've been or where you're going, it just matters that you're here right now and you consider yourself part of Middle America. Now, here at the show, a lot of people think I'm too Republican and too conservative, and a lot of people think I'm too liberal and I'm too Democrat, but I try to be in the middle somewhere. I like to think of myself as being in the middle, but on the right hand side, because I have more conservative values than some of my friends that are further left than I am. So, what we try to do here is we try to get rid of the 20% of the crazies on the left and the 20% of the crazies on the right, and have a good conversation with the 60% of Americans that are in the middle. Here's why that's important. Here lately, it seems like there's a lot of tension between the left and the right, and the right and the left, and the progressives and the conservatives. It doesn't, ever since Donald Trump has gotten elected, it seems like everything's gotten crazy. So Donald Trump became the president of the United States on the 20th of January. He put his foot on the accelerator and he's pushing it in through the floorboard because he's accelerating in his attempt to change the way that business is done in the United States of America. I think that he's seriously a man on a mission, and that he believes that he has a mandate to make changes. And I will just leave it at that. Now, a lot of people have let me know that they think I'm a Donald Trump fan. Well, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. Okay, let me put it like this. I'm not a Joe Biden fan. I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I'm not an Elon fan. I'm not an RFK fan. I'm not anybody. None of these people mean a hill of beans to me. They're never going to come to my house. They're never going to break bread with me. They're never going to come to a picnic in my backyard. I can only do two things. I can only see what they do and what policies they are for or are against. We all have weaknesses in our personality. I was just talking to my daughter today about some of mine and about some of my thoughts that go through about relationships and about how I look at people and about who I have in my life. And so I've got some issues. A lot of people in the United States Air Force thought that I had issues, but a lot of people in the Air Force thought that I was okay. So everybody has failings. And the reason I say that is if I take away people's failings and I just go, okay, what are they trying to do for the country? What are they trying to do in the world? Then I have a better idea of what that person is going to mean for me in the long run. Now, every time that somebody says Donald Trump, everybody freaks out on one side. Every time somebody says Elon Musk, other people freak out. And some of the same people freak out. It was the same way with Joe Biden. Sometimes, anytime anybody mentioned Joe Biden, everybody freaked out. If somebody mentions Clinton or Obama or Bush's, people are freaking out. All I'm saying is, if everybody could stop freaking out, it would be a much better world. And we can all talk about the policies. Now, tonight, I'm going to talk about the policies that are happening in Ukraine. I dropped a Facebook post last week, and it got so many responses, it was almost hard to keep up with. But it was a very, very important post, because what I put on that post, I was like, hey, if you're not trying to stop the war, you need to shut up, because there are people in the world that are kind of sick of war. I'm one of those people. I don't want any war. I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care what happened then, there, or whatever. I don't care what anybody's saying. I would just like to see young Ukrainians and young Russians stop being killed by some decisions that a bunch of bureaucrats made in Russia, in Ukraine, and in Europe, and in NATO, and the United States. All of these things were caused by bureaucrats that were trying to prove points and trying to protect their country or not protect their country. And everything that everybody's doing is in the name of national security and world peace. Well, they're doing everything except having world peace in Ukraine right now. And it's very obvious that every single time that you go on the YouTube and you look up and you see who's blowing up who, that somebody's dying in Ukraine right now, even as we speak. Rough estimates are that 125,000 people have been killed over there. I personally think the number's probably higher than that. So let's go. Let's just be conservative. Just go 125,000. We have 30,000 people here in Cabot, Arkansas, right? So that'd be 30, 60, 90, 120. So that's 4 times the population of my town that have been killed. Some people say that up to 1 million people have been killed. So that's tragic. Here's what I know about it. Tonight, we're going to discuss Ukraine and why Zelensky is very confused. And you might not realize what's going on in Ukraine, but there's a good reason why the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is very confused. And we're going to get to that. So let's do what we normally do. Let's talk about the first. Oh, holy smokes. Let's go. Where did it go? I am not ready to go at all. How many? Let's talk about the Constitution, greatest document ever written. There's a lot of people in the world, over 8 billion people, and we're 36 trillion, $500 billion in debt. So let's cover that. All right, so let's get right to this. Let's get right to Ukraine and why Zelensky is very, very confused. In 1989, in November, I believe November 9th, 1989. Let me back up. In 1987, Ronald Reagan went to the Berlin Wall and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And that was very, very important because the Berlin Wall signified the difference after World War II between the Allies, and Russia was part of the group of individuals that helped overthrow the Germans and Nazis, right? So it was the Americans, the Russians, the British, and somebody else, maybe the French. I don't know. Anyway, they divided Berlin up into 4 sectors. The 4 sectors were the American sector, the British sector, whatever, I can't remember, and then the Russian sector. And the Russians built a wall. And they built a wall that separated East Germany from West Germany. And that wall has stood ever since World War II. The Soviet bloc had all of these people from World War II that basically oppressed everybody in the Eastern Bloc, and then that became known as the Russian states. Everything from Ukraine to Crimea to the Moldovas and half of the stands, everything was very, very Russian. And the reason why that's important is because in 1987, when Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, it was the president of the United States speaking to the president of Russia, and he said, it doesn't have to be this way. So Gorbachev took a very, very, very big risk, but with assurances from Reagan and a bunch of politicians in Europe. In 1981, on November 9th, the Berlin Wall came down and it released freedom to cover that side of the world into Eastern Europe. And that went all the way to Russia. It wasn't just Germany. It covered all of the states like Estonia and Bulgaria and Poland, and covered all of those states, and it went all the way to Russia. And now Russia can actually be considered free. Now, people think that they're communist, but I'm telling you right now, Russia is free. They have elections. They have their own little thing going. It's not exactly like ours, but it's a different form of freedom, and Russia is now free. Why is this important? Because when the Berlin Wall came down, everybody in Europe and everybody in the United States basically told Russia that we have our differences, but we promise you that NATO will not get any closer to Russia. So NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is made up of a bunch of countries in Europe and the United States, basically said, we promise you that we're not going to get any closer to you. And everybody went, hey, that's very, very cool. But here's what the problem is. Ready? Are you ready for the problem? Well, the problem is the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland became part of NATO in 1999, which that means that in 1991, when Bush gave his word to Yeltsin that NATO was not going to get any closer to Russia, after Reagan had promised Gorbachev that in 1999, three countries, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, became part of NATO, which put NATO closer to Russia. That's important because Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia became part of NATO in 2004. Once again, that was moving eastward out of Germany, eastward towards Russia. After everybody told Russia that NATO wasn't going to get any closer. And then Albania, Croatia went to NATO in 2009. Montenegro went in 2017. Macedonia became part of NATO in 2020. And that is significant because since we gave our word to Russia that we weren't going to get any closer to Russia using NATO, 14 countries have joined NATO. I want you to think about that. If you really do you know how we talk about Russia in this country? We talk about Russia being the enemy all the time. Before 2016, we didn't talk about Russia being the enemy. We were on good terms with Russia from basically Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev back in 1987, 88, 89. Everybody was celebrating. The Berlin Wall came down. Russia was all happy. Everybody was great. And then somewhere along the line, Russia became our enemy again. Can anybody tell me? Right. So they went into Crimea. But why did they go into Crimea? There was a political turmoil in Crimea, and half of the people in Crimea wanted to become Russian anyway. That's why NATO and the United States didn't get involved with that. It was a very, very quick takeover. It was like a weekend. It was like one day, Crimea was Crimea, and the next day they were annexed by Russia. And everybody went, well, that was interesting, but they don't have anything we want, so we're cool with that. And they're not a part of NATO. So Russia has made some excursions into other countries, but I would like to remind you that the United States also has. Like, remember that whole thing with Afghanistan? When we went into Afghanistan? Do you think that the people in Russia and in China and the people around the globe weren't having concerns about the problem of the United States expanding its territory and going into Afghanistan? And then how about the Iraq thing? So we're protecting our national interest, and Russia is protecting their national interest. And Russia is doing the things that nation states do to protect their political interest. I'm not defending Putin. I'm not defending Russia. I'm just saying that they have political aspirations that they are also trying to take care of. And they don't want to feel threatened, and they don't want to feel like they're getting anything done to their country that is going to be reflected in a negative way to their people. So you got to remember, all of these conflicts have happened since 1990, and this is how we've gotten where we are. So everybody said, hey, we're not going to get closer to this. And then Russia wasn't really an enemy until 2016. And you got to ask yourself, what happened in 2016? Well, here's the crazy thing about it and the things that we know now. Prior to 2016, there was a guy that was in Ukraine named hold on just a second. Poroshenko. I keep getting him and Shokin confused. So Poroshenko was the president of Ukraine. You know what he was? He was pro-Russia. He was voted in by the people, and all of the people knew that he was pro-Russian. This is very important because there was another party that was there that opposed him. And that was the party that Zelenski was in. Here's why Zelensky is confused. Everybody needs to hear this in the entire world. The CIA, the State Department, and USAID pumped money into Ukraine in order to get Zelensky elected to the presidency in Ukraine. I will repeat myself. The United States Central Intelligence Agency, the United States State Department, the United States State USAID, whatever the hell that stands for, pumped money into Ukraine in order to get Zelensky elected to the president of Ukraine. Why? Because he was pro-American. He was pro us, and he was against Russian occupation. So that means that the country was split. So if you look at the Donbass area, they're very, very, very pro-Russian. But if you go farther away from the Donbass area and you go south and you go to the west, they are less pro-Russian. So everybody that's near the Russian border is pro-Russian, everybody that's not. But anyway, Zelensky became the president. Here's the crazy thing about it. I don't know how Hunter Biden was involved with all that, but I am pretty sure that Hunter Biden was working for the United States of America in order to pump money into Ukraine through USAID and through the CIA and through the State Department in order to fix the election in Ukraine in order to get Zelensky president of Ukraine. That's my theory. I don't know whether it happened, but that's what I think. Because it's very, very unusual that they were pumping money in there. They thought that they were being corrupt. The president of Ukraine thought that the company that Hunter Biden was working for was corrupt. So he had a dude who was the prosecutor in Ukraine, the national prosecutor named Viktor Shokin, investigating the company Burisma, of which Hunter Biden was sitting on the board, pumping money through that company into pro-American pockets in Ukraine. So Hunter Biden might have been working for the United States of America. I've said this on the show before. Might have been. But in 2016, Biden went over there and Biden said, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not going to get $1 billion in loan guarantees from who else? USAID. That was the carrot. And they said, you fire Viktor Shokin and we will give you $1 billion in loan guarantees through USAID. So they fired Viktor Shokin. Zelensky was the president and he has been president ever since. And everything was cool while Trump was the president. And then as soon as Trump left the presidency, because Biden was the friends of the wrong side, Russia went, this is not good. We're going into Ukraine. And that's how Ukraine happened. So when we started pumping money into Ukraine's defense funds through our military industrial complex, who do you think was surprised? Nobody was surprised. Zelensky was like, of course they're going to support me. They helped get me elected. Of course they're going to give me everything I want to defend my country. European, I'm going to be a rock star. Here we go. This is the way. This is going to be absolutely awesome. We're going to fight the Russians. I'm going to be a hero. So that when Trump gets reelected and he goes, hey, look here, dude, we're not going to send you any more money. Zelensky is now confused because Zelensky goes, wait a minute. You poured a ton of money into me being elected in my own country through the CIA, through USAID, and through the State Department. You helped me get elected. As soon as Russia came over, you started sending me billions and billions of dollars supporting your military industrial complex. And now you're telling me you're going to cut off the money? That is some bullshit. Come on, man. You made me. Keep the money gravy train rolling. This is what the crazy thing is, that nobody realized why Zelensky's confused. Zelensky's confused because we've been giving him money since 2016, 2015, 2014. We've been giving him lots of money. So now you have to admit, if you were Zelensky, you would be confused too. All Donald Trump is saying, look here, we're not going to give you any more money anymore. You got to stop this war. And Zelensky's going, but we're not the bad guys. And he's right. Technically, he's right. They are not the bad guys. However, if you have a country that is pro-Russia, Ukraine, prior to 2016, if you have a pro-Russian, and all of a sudden it's not pro-Russia anymore because America messed around with the elections. And here's the thing. NATO kept going closer and closer and closer to Russia. The 3 times that Russia has been invaded, it has been invaded through Ukraine because that's where the most hospitable lane is up into, they've got the water support, right? They can get the troops there and they can go into Russia through Ukraine. That's why people use Ukraine to get into Russia and attack Russia. And NATO wanted, and NATO and Zelensky were like, hey, we're going to become buddies. And NATO is going to go in there so that the military industrial complex of the United States can sell more arms to more countries. That's what's going on. So in Bulgaria, Estonia, Czech Republic, and Poland, and Hungary, and Albania, and everything, they have to put 2% of their gross domestic product towards the defense of NATO. That means that every country that gets into NATO has got to spend 2% on their defense. That means that our defense contractors earn 2% of the gross domestic product of everybody that's in NATO, because they're only allowed to use integrated fighting systems that mainly and primarily are made by the United States of America. That's why they want to keep expanding NATO until every country on the planet, including Russia and China, are in NATO, so that they can sell and they get that 2% money. Yeah, 2% money. It's absolutely mind-blowing the way this whole thing works. Somebody joins NATO, the defense industry gets 2% of their GDP. We make another friend, Russia gets more mad. That's what the deal is, and that's why Zelensky's mad. Do you understand what the problem is? The problem is that Trump has said, no more of that bullshit. We're not going to lie anymore. We're not going to do anything. We want people to have peace. And everybody goes, oh, well, Russia's the bad guy. Well, let's say that Russia is the bad guy. It is what it is. Nobody in Europe and nobody in the United States is going to go to Ukraine to fight and push the Russians back into Russia. You want to know why? Because as soon as anybody in NATO goes to Ukraine and puts boots on the ground, then I believe that Putin will probably use a tactical nuclear device. It's a small nuclear device, and it'll only be in a local region, but thousands upon thousands of people will die. Don't threaten Putin. I don't know whether he's a good guy, bad guy, but I know that he's an evil guy, and he will kill you if he thinks that you need to be killed. And if NATO goes in there, I believe he will drop a tactical nuke. And then we will be in World War III. So everybody says Trump is the bad guy here. And then that NATO and Germany and England and France and Spain and Canada and all of those other countries over there that criticized Donald Trump and said, we stand with Zelensky, we stand with Ukraine. Yeah, they stand with him. What does that mean? They said they stand with him. They made a Facebook post and they committed money, but they're not sending their troops. So how committed can they be? I wrote this on a Facebook page earlier today. If your neighbor's house was on fire, would you make a Facebook post and commit to send that person a check? Or would you get your ass outside and help them put out the fire? Because the first thing, if you're going to write them a check and support them on Facebook, that's not really helping them put out the fire. That's just saying that you're supporting them. But what you're really doing when you go outside and you get your boots on the ground and you go fight the fire with them, then that's really supporting them. And nobody in Europe is going to go and support that war with troops. They're only going to do it by sending more munitions and money. They're going to let the Ukrainians continue to die. And by themselves, the Ukrainians do not have the ability or the power or the infrastructure to push Russia back. They can be irritating as hell because that's the way that war is fought now, is that you have one smaller asymmetric force that pisses off the bigger force, and the bigger force can't kill the little force because they're moving around too fast. It's called asymmetric warfare. Ukraine's got that down to the T right now. But Russia's got more troops, more weapons, more bombs. They got 124 million people in Russia. They have 50 million people in Ukraine, maybe 30. It might be, but let's go with 40 million people in Ukraine. There's 40 million people in Ukraine, but there's 1.5. What did I just say a minute ago? My numbers are confused. The population of Russia is like 4 or 5 times larger than Ukraine. And Russia has been producing tanks and armaments and bullets and beans and everything in a war machine for the last 100 years. So you know that they have a better capability of pumping up their industrial military complex, and they are going to outgun and outpeople Ukraine. So Ukraine can't push them back. So the only two options. Number one, you go to the negotiating table and you work it out and you stop the fighting, or eventually Russia wins. And it might take them 10 years, it might take them 20 years, but if you think that Putin's going to back down, you are wrong. He will kill everybody in Ukraine and he will kill everybody necessary in Russia to make sure that Ukraine does not get into NATO. All they have to say is, hey, look here, Ukraine's not going to become part of NATO. That's all they have to say, and the fighting will stop. But they're not going to do that. It's crazy. This is craziness. But that's why Zelensky is very, very confused, because the United States and NATO has done everything for that boy. And when they finally tell him no, all of a sudden now it's Donald Trump's fault. It's J.D. Vance's fault. They're being mean to Zelensky. Yeah, they're fucking being mean to Zelensky. You want to know why? Because Zelensky is expecting things that the United States is no longer willing to provide him. And now he's being a petulant child, and he's going, you guys, he's kicking his legs and he's screaming in the aisle at Walmart. You are being mean to me. You don't love me. No, not that we don't love you, bro. It's that we're tired of paying for your lifestyle. All right. So that's what I got to say about that. I hope that explains my position and why I don't like Zelensky. I don't like Trump. I don't like any of those other people, right? I don't dislike them either. I don't dislike Zelensky. I understand what he's doing. I don't dislike Trump. I understand what he's doing. I don't dislike the position of the Democrats because I understand why they're opposed to certain things that Donald Trump does. I understand the position of all the people in Europe. I understand it. I understand. I get you. But can we just not have any more people killed in Ukraine? That's all I'm asking. Let's solve the problem. All right. What else? All right. So, I think I'm going to end on that. I think I'm going to end on that. I was going to talk about the Supreme Court saying no to $2 billion that Donald Trump was spending, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let it go. Hey, I'd like to say thank you very much. I greatly appreciate you guys being with me. Susie Goebel and Carolyn and Jason, thanks a lot for making some comments on here. I greatly appreciate everybody showing up. My name is Mickey. This has been Mickey in the Middle, the quintessential show for Middle Americans, where all Middle Americans are welcome. We're just discussing politics from the middle of the road perspective. We're just not trying to make anybody mad. We're just trying to make sure that all Middle Americans are informed, that all Middle Americans have a place to go where reasonable conversations can take place. So I'll see you online. Remember to like, share, love on me a little bit, and you guys have a great night. You guys take care. Love you. God bless.